Good morning, everybody. This is Stephen Pugh of the Home Bible College. I want to bring to you a book review today. It's Sunday the 2nd of April 2017. Now, the book review that I want to bring to you is a book that I now don't have. I don't have it. I've given it to somebody and sadly it's never been returned, but I do remember it. It's probably one of the books which has changed my life more than any other. I do have, however, the collected writings of Harold St. John. There we are. The collected writings of Harold St. John. Now, this comes in 2 volumes. This is the first volume. What a dear brother. I think is it James? Let me just have a look. Yes, James Anderson. What a dear brother James Anderson has done is he's put together all of the writings of Harold St. John into 2 small volumes. Now, I want to say something about these volumes. They're the richest volume of scriptural truth that I've ever known. Ever known. Absolutely outstanding. Now, in the front of this book I put a small picture, which is a picture of Harold St. John in his younger days. There's a picture of him with his boots on. Okay, and so who was Harold St. John? Well, Harold St. John was different from any other Bible teacher that I've ever known or heard. He was called both a scholar and a saint. The 2 don't always go together, but in Harold St. John's case, they certainly did. Now, his biography, which was written by his daughter Patricia St. John on her father Harold St. John, has been the book that I wish to review. It's not these collected writings, although they're great. Harold St. John probably has had more influence upon me, unknown to him of course, than perhaps any other person. There's been so many people that have had a massive influence on my life, mainly people that have passed away already. Harold St. John was a Victorian. He lived in the Victorian age. He passed away in 1957, so I was only 1. However, so many people of my childhood remember him. They remember him. They remember his speaking, and of course it is possible to get the odd recording. His voice is very high and squeaky. That was the custom of the day. But he was a man of absolutely unquestioned ability in the Bible. Now, he came from the aristocracy. His father was governor of Sarawak in the Far East, and he spent his early days there. He wasn't converted till he was about 19 years of age. But even in those very, very early days, he was a person of immense intelligence and sensitivity because of a problem with the family estate. The family estate had to be sold off, and the family came into poverty. And all the family were unable to have what they wanted was a university education. But that wasn't going to hold Harold St. John back. What he did is he would visit the library and he would read everything, literally everything. He was also a man of immense knowledge in the scriptures. It was said of him that perhaps no other person in the United Kingdom knew the Bible like Harold St. John. And very often when there were Bible readings and when there was a question and answer session, people would ask a question about some obscure passage and he would give them the reference and quote the whole scripture for them and give the context. He was a man of immense ability. But the interesting thing about Harold St. John that comes out through his writings and through his preaching is not so much his Bible knowledge. That's something that's a given. With Harold St. John, what comes out to me is his godliness. He was a man of immense spirituality. And he very often would visit the slums. He would preach down at Mile End, or he would preach in Hyde Park, and he was always the one that people listened to most. He had the joy as a young man of going down to take a series of meetings at St Ives in Cornwall, his summer holiday, with his brother. And while they were there, they had the joy of seeing revival break out. Something like about 300 people were converted in just a couple of weeks. To everybody's amazement, when he got married, he announced that he was going to become a missionary to Brazil with no visible means of support. This was a tremendous shock, and he and Dr. Payne would spend all of their years in Brazil, for many years, leading the work of God there. Harold St. John had 6 children. Patricia St. John, the famous Christian writer, was one of his daughters. Eventually he returned from the mission field, and he became a travelling Bible teacher and travelled to every continent of the world. It was the custom in those days for people in the latter part of their life to travel, and he would certainly travel to all the parts of the world preaching and teaching. He also ran the Abergele Girls' School for Missionaries. Okay, this was a school where missionaries could leave their young girls in the hands of capable people who would give them a thorough education. Harold St. John loved that, and he excelled at that immensely. Now, I'm not going to read too much about his life, as I'll burst into tears. I find his life is so utterly, utterly riveting that it just touches me in the very deepest place in my life. But we mustn't think that Harold St. John was just a very nice man and a good person who understood the Bible a bit. This was a man of immense knowledge. He didn't just know the Bible, he knew everything about science and literature. He would read Homer, he would read the classics. He was a man self-taught in all of the ancient languages, so he was a man of immense ability. And what's very interesting, when you read any of his little commentary, he wrote one major commentary which he calls an analysis of Mark. It is priceless, absolutely priceless. I'm not even sure if it's available today, but an analysis of Mark by Harold St. John, see if you can find it. Now, when you read his analysis of Mark, you will discover that there is so much on one single page that it's fairly difficult to take it all in. You just have to keep reading the same page again and again and again to be able to take in all of the teaching. Now, there were some aspects of what he believed that I wouldn't personally subscribe to, but that's nothing that should ever distract from my long-term life friendship with this guy. He was an amazing man. And when you open some of his writings, you will see that he didn't just know the scriptures. He had a depth of knowledge about the scriptures which is absolutely unbelievable. On one occasion, in a Bible study class, surrounded by a very, very prestigious group of people, a question was asked. The question was an obscure verse from Hebrews: almost all things are by the law purged with blood. And so the person said, well, what were the other things that were not purged with blood? Nobody knew, but Harold St. John did, and he got up and he explained completely how that some things were able under the old covenant to be purged without blood. See, this was a man of immense knowledge, extremely knowledgeable. He would spend 4 or 5 hours a day in study. 4 or 5 hours a day in study. And so that's the sort of man he was. He was a great friend of W.B. Vine, a great friend of many of the great men of his day. And those that came to know him came to love him and to respect him. So there we are. That's the life story of Harold St. John. There's not enough time to tell you all what I think about this great man of God. So I commend it to you. Get hold of the life story of Harold St. John. You will be enthralled by this amazing, amazing man. Well, God bless you all. By the way, if ever you want to purchase a copy of his collected writings, the writings of Harold St. John, comes in 2 volumes. It's by Gospel Literature Publications, I think. You will find it to be pretty amazing. You will sit there and wonder how on earth you never knew all these things before. Well, God bless you. It's great to talk to you. Look forward to next Sunday. Have a great day. Bye for now.